Welcome back, everyone, to the Economic Prepper Show, where I'm joined by Dylan and Patrick. Let's start with Patrick. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm amazing. I am Patrick. We are all Patrick.
Shout out to George. There we go. Dylan, follow that up for me.
Oh, I am amazing. I am Dylan. We are all Dylan. And just with saying that, like, comment, subscribe. I'm looking forward to what we're getting into today. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And I am Jeff. We're not all Jeff, and we're thankful for that. But today we got so many news. We're jumping right in, okay? We're jumping right in. The first story, speaking of a guy named Dylan, and yes, his name really is Dylan, and he's really a guy. But in case you haven't heard, which I don't know what rock you were under, but Anheiser Busch and a couple other companies too. Like, this guy's been out there for like a year, I believe. And I'm going to call him a guy because that's what he is. He's been portraying himself as a lady, and now he's made himself into a spokesman for some reason. And Bud Light and their crazy VP, I think she is. I'm sure you've probably seen that video too, explaining why Anheuser-Busch needed to reinvest and revitalize their company and make it more modern and inclusive. I'm so sick of these words. They lost $6 billion in less than a week. Good job, guys. Good job. So, Patrick, feelings?
I have happy feelings right now to see the community responding, to see that the mainstream narrative isn't what keeps us all happy, to see that the company is suffering because of the bad choices they are making.
Fair points, one and all. Dylan, what do you got on that?
Yeah, I think it's a wild story. I think this is just really is an example of the culture wars. But I think the bigger example and one of the bigger things for this show is, I like to say is do the work today to build the future you want to live in tomorrow. And one of those things is supporting companies that you believe in, that, have the same type of views that you have. And one of the things for me is, like, I don't like supporting big, giant, massive brands if I can avoid it. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes there's benefits there. I try to find local small businesses to buy products and services from. I'm wearing a shirt from a small whiskey distillery here. And so I try to find those over giving my money to these big brands that do stuff like this. They're totally out of touch with their audiences, or they just are doing something to push an agenda. Which is no fun. Like, I want a good product. I don't want everything to be politicized, and I want to support people that have values that I want to help grow. So I think this is a good example of people taking a stand and doing that, and hopefully we'll see more people do that going forward with different companies, and hopefully it'll lead to positive change versus more cultural war battles like this.
Yeah, I think we'll get to big box stores a little bit later and what's going on there. But I think you're definitely right. And Turkey and Paige, I having been in the Southeast and all over the country, actually, but living in the Southeast for a little while, and my ex-brother-in-law was a big NASCAR guy, but he told me, like, how devoted those people were, not just to the sport, but also to the sponsorships. Like, if let me try to remember. So Kyle Busch was an M&M's card. They would support M&M's. So whatever, like, or Jeff Gordon, well, I think it was DuPont. It's like whatever the company, it could be. Back in the old days of Marlboro, but now we're talking about, like, foods and beverages and other products. But they support not just the driver, but also the team and what their main sponsors are. So they put their money where their mouth is, and that's a big thing for the Southeast. And a lot of people don't pick up on that, but it's a big deal. And I think it's good to see nationally that people are putting money where their mouth is, because there's too many mouths right now. They're just mouthing off, and now when dollars are hard to come by, for many reasons that we talk about this show, and people are very judicious with how they spend, making informed decisions. And, like, what are we going to go to Walmart and order from Amazon, or are we going to do something else? And you can get better deals if you deal direct. Like, we've had Farmer John in the program. If you deal directly with a farmer, you cut out the middleman. You cut out all those markups. So people don't understand the process of, you go from the manufacturer has to sell to the wholesaler, has to sell to the distributor sells to the big box store, and they sell it to you. And they all add markups on each level. So the more levels you can cut out, the better off you are. So if you're going to spend $5 on a product at Walmart, if you find the main manufacturer and buy it for 3 or 4, he's probably getting more money from that, or she is getting more value from you directly, and you're getting where it's coming from. You get it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah. And I want to say something real quick, a mini rant, but just as like as an adult, you have to you have to start thinking about this. And it is like you said, put your money where your mouth is. But the difference between being an investor and a consumer, and a constant consumer, and like giving free advertising to these massive companies who you don't have no stake in, who don't care about you. Well, all they look at you for is someone to make them money to line their pockets. Right. And start aligning yourself with brands, businesses, and people that either one you're invested in. So when you go talk about it in public, right, it facilitates your investment. Of course, not investment advice. And it's always good to disclose that if you're talking about that at scale. But like, so for example, I have this Bitcoin hat on there. The beautiful thing about something like Bitcoin, we're going to talk about it later, but I can talk about it and promote it because I own Bitcoin. And the more people that buy into Bitcoin and have Bitcoin, right, the more value my Bitcoin has. Right? And so that's alignment of those synergies. And this company is owned by a friend that I have on my shirt. So I'm supporting businesses and things and putting money towards and going out in public with brands, ideas, businesses, and strategies and things that I have like an investment in. And if you really love a big brand, go invest in it. So then when you talk about it or you buy their product, you're actually aligning your money you're spending with the investments that you're making. I think that's an important thing for a lot of people.
It is.
And I think the other thing that let's talk about this too. It's like, man, that was the best thing that probably could have happened to Budweiser too. Think about like their competitor. Like Budweiser is ridiculous and Bud Light is another like brand. But when you start looking at this, where do you think they're all going to go? It's going to take the American market, period. It's going to Corona. It's going to Dos Equis, right? When people hit Super Bowl and football season, it's going to feel the pain more than the $6 billion they've already lost. They're going to have so much future loss in revenue. Corona is probably so happy right now. Dos Equis is probably all over it with marketing right now. Like, I don't even know what they're going to come up with, but I'm really excited to see the commercials he's going to use because this is ridiculous. He's going to go straight up, I'm a man. And what men drink, it's just going to be simple, They really pooched a donkey on this one.
Yeah, that's a market you don't really mess with. I mean, that is a guy-centric sports, everything, and they mess with sports too. But yeah, all these different, like from Sam Adams to Coors to Michelob, name all the different brands. They're all
happy.
They're all happy, but it's also interesting that it's interesting the sectors that have not seen major price increases. I don't know if you noticed, but alcohol is not going up as much because I think they want to encourage that kind of consumption as well. But let's not go off on that. We've already ranted on this one enough. We've got more stories. Let's find out what the next story is. So this one, let's see. This one here is 2 million people fled from America big cities from 2020 to 2022. And one of them is not too far from us, Patrick, in Portland. I'd see if the story has all the numbers, or the map. I've seen some maps that before. This story didn't have the map. While we're talking, I'll find a map of it. But it's been an outpouring of mostly blue cities like LA, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Portland. Patrick, is this related to job? Is it related to style of living, or is it a little bit of both?
So let me just take Portland, for example, because I know that market well enough to talk about it. The Portland market has always been, let me just say Portland in general has always been a little different. Portland's been a little weird, but what has happened in the last 10 years has gone from like, hey, Portland's a little weird with the kinds of coffee and foods that they have, to like Portland's a little unsafely weird to do anything because we have no idea what the heck's going on. And people are now seeing crime push into the bordering counties like the Beaverton area, the Hillsborough area, the really expensive areas like the Nike area, the Intel heavy area, Amazon areas out there. And that's driving people out to drive further just so that they don't have to be with their families there. My own family are thinking the same things. We want to get out of this area because the city, the garbage is spilling out of Portland and all into the surrounding areas. The homelessness is moving from Portland city center all the way down the Max rail line because they're doing nothing about it, ending up in Hillsborough. So what you've got is like a 40-mile radius around Portland and all these big cities, especially around the I-5 corridor, where people don't want to be there. And it sucks.
Unmuted. Yeah, absolutely. And Dylan, what's your take on that? Are you seeing this kind of effect locally in the Denver area? What are you seeing?
Kind kind of, yeah, yes and no. I mean, I was a person that left Denver for the mountains, right? When everything shut down. I think the past 2 years, a couple of big themes that have happened to make this be more of a reality of people leaving these large cities. I think one was the as it's called, the cerveza sickness, where everything got shut down, and streaming software like Zoom and remote meetings started taking off, right? Where a lot of corporations, and we'll talk about the impact that this is having on I think $20 trillion industry a little bit later, but the people didn't need to be in person to conduct meetings, to conduct business, and so you got these people that are getting paid these salaries, and they're realizing they can live out of a van and travel the country, and get a satellite internet connection and still do all the work that they could before. Or they're realizing they can go live in the mountains, right, and do their job in a major city and still get paid the same rate. So that they're kind of doing this location arbitrage, and we've seen some employers push back against that. Namely, Elon Musk was a big proponent of getting people back in the office these past few years. So I think that's a big thing, and that's a trend that I don't see going away. I saw a meme the other day where this person's like, look, if you don't give me a raise to go back in the office, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to work from home. And then the employer was basically like, okay, since you can work anywhere in the world, we're just going to outsource your job to India. And we're going to see more and more about that. And in the Bitcoin space, Jeff Booth talks about that, but how these companies are going to start realizing you can outsource and find talent anywhere around the world. And once you can start doing that, right, then you can tap into markets where the prices are substantially lower and you can get the same or higher quality work. And so we're going to see that happen more and more. And of course, I don't know if that's going to incentivize a mass migration back to the cities. So that's one big thing, that kind of trend of going to all these other markets, digitization of meetings and things like that in the workplace. And the other thing that you saw and I saw in Denver is like Patrick said, the increase in homelessness that was happening in the cities. So a lot of policies, and I don't know exactly what they all are, but policies that happened over the past few years allowed for basically breeding grounds of just kind of chaos. And it's tough wanting to live in a city and pay, if of course we also have the rent problem, pay absorbent amounts of rent when you got someone who like can pull their pants down and do number two right on the sidewalk, right in front of where you're at. Or some people who steal your bikes, and you see like these massive bike forts. This happened to me in Denver. I had 3 bikes stole off my second floor balcony. And more than likely it could have been by a bike thief gang. They were going to sell it. But you see these homeless guys riding around on bikes. It's like, where do they get the bikes? And they have these piles of bikes in their tent cities. And you see that, you're like, I don't want to walk over there anymore. And it's just unappealing. And of course, we heard the story about San Francisco, about the Cash App founder who was murdered the other week, which is terrible. And people talking about downtown San Francisco. So you have lack of business, those things leaving. You have, just more dangerous conditions, unsanitary conditions. So it's not very appealing. And then on top of that, we're starting to have more and more policies come out of these cities that people don't agree on or people don't like. And, they're realizing they can go somewhere else and they don't have to put up with it. And I think that's all combining to contribute to this. So I know it's a long answer, but I think it's something that is a trend that's happening and something to really pay attention to.
Yeah, I think going back to your outsourcing of labor, that's been a trend for like 30 years. And it's the geopolitical risk that's out there right now. And we'll get to the world conversation. But I still talk to people in like industries, and we'll talk about especially the tech industries and the susceptibility they are to Asia, China, issues there. Like if you outsource a job, it's one thing to answer, like for people that just do customer service, that's an easy outsource and understandable that you can do that, or even software ability. But hardware or tangible products, that's where you got to like wonder where that's going to be. But then you have to worry about like the cost of commodities, and we're starting to see those costs go down in the PPI and CPI numbers, if you believe those. But we're still seeing migrations out of the cities, like you said, and that leads right into the next story, which is Walmart. Like Walmart, we're seeing Walmart not just like having layoffs, and we've heard about many companies doing layoffs, but Walmart are closing stores in Chicago, which is another exodus city. Like companies people are leaving that area. And Walmart, like, are they shrinking? Are they going to close down? Because people are really retracing, or they're pulling back on their amount of spending. So you have these dangerous areas, and then people are pulling back on their spending. So it makes sense that they would, shrink a little bit and have less stores. Like I even heard Jeff Bezos quoted as saying, Amazon may not be here in a few years because like people aren't going to be ordering online as much because then you have to rely on the shipping and the cost of that, and if fuel costs go over. So and as people pursue more local type vendors. But I don't know what you guys think. So Dylan, how do you think about the Walmart angle there?
I think it's probably a couple things. Spending is one. The appeal of Walmart, like, it's not a very appealing store. Um, in general, like, I hate going to Walmart. It's just so big. There's so much there. Like, it just takes a lot of time. And I think just you mentioned Amazon, but the growth of online e-commerce, people can get a lot of stuff just online. Right. And so it's a lot easier to buy a lot of those goods and services. And so perhaps it's a combination of people leaving the area, maybe not have as much money to spend, but then also a lowering of demand for in-person retail, and going and perusing a big store.
Yeah.
Just do it on your phone, right? You can shop 100 different sites all from with a few clicks on your phone or your laptop. Why walk around aisles in Walmart to do that?
Yeah,
so I think that might be part of it as well, but it's just something to look into.
I think some of the debate, though, is like for a lot of these places with Walmarts, now this doesn't happen in Chicago, but in certain areas, especially depressed areas, it's the only game in town. They pushed everybody else out. So them being pulled out, that's a big impact on those, less fortunate areas that don't have an alternative. But Patrick, what's your take on these stores closing up and like what could be the next version of the economy? And as we're heading to maybe 15-minute cities and you need to be close and get to a store, what's your take on like some of these angles?
I'm not going to do it. So you guys can do whatever you want with your 15-minute cities. I'm going to own my own 15-minute city where it takes you 15 minutes just to get up my freaking driveway, because I'm not going to have anything to do with the garbage that's going on. But unfortunately, what's happening with Walmart, it is going to impact a lot of the underserved communities, especially like having a background in healthcare. It is sad. A lot of these Walmarts are the places where they go. The same thing with these Targets where you have CSV in them now, or CVS. Was that right? CVS. So for me, it's just like really sad to know that this is the kind of impacts that we're seeing. And whenever we see this happening, and we know that finally the government said the recession's here, but now that the recession is obviously affecting us, and we start to see some versions of hyperinflation and some versions of disinflation all around industries, and it will depend on what we demand. And what's going to be in demand are the things that we can't get. So yes, people are going to go local. Even when you look at the food supply being tainted with mRNA, it's like, what is safe anymore? My wife is looking at me. My friends are talking to me. Jeff, you and I were just talking. Where are we going to get good local beef? We're not doing this anymore. We don't trust anyone. I was just on a show with Lisa this morning. There's no public trust. The writing is on the wall for a lot of these companies because even the underprivileged are going to find ways to survive. If they find out how easy it is to grow chickens, they're going to start making chickens and raising eggs, and it'll be amazing. It'll be a grand life. I can't wait to get back to Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah, I don't know if I shared it on this show. I talk a lot on the internet, so I don't remember where share everything. But I know I've seen a general trend from all my friends all over the country, from college friends to high school friends, chickens, gardening, do-it-yourself stuff. They're all trying to do things on their own, and we're getting back to like the victory garden kind of concept. And it's interesting to see to watch people on Facebook say, "Hey, here's how to make a garden for $40." That kind of thing I'm seeing out there. But we got two other major stories to talk about till we even get to world events. So let's get to one, which is, speaking of the Walmart angle, real estate, and especially the commercial real estate sector. This was a big story that came out, and I know that Jack from Norway Special Finance has been looking at it as a ninja. But commercial real estate, we talked about this before. We have downtown office buildings. Who's going to be in them? If Walmart pulls out, who's going to go in? What are they going to do in these spaces? And these loans are going to come due in the next year and a half. And Jack dug in even further. While Blackstone closed their commercial mortgage-backed security, and you can't, again, they mentioned it again this month, if you invested in this, you can't pull your money out right now. They froze it. But at the same time, they created another fund. And not only did they make another fund for $30 billion, look at who is involved in investing in it. Okay, I'll zoom in on this. They are now promoting this and pushing it towards teachers' retirement. So
pension funds.
Yeah, pension funds. So these these loans are so toxic, and we'll talk about toxic stuff in another moment. But these loans are so toxic, and they have like commercial real estate has a much shorter timeline. It's 5 to 10 years max, not a 30-year loan. So they have like a balloon, or they have to refinance every 4 or 5 years to keep things moving. And people look at like, well, what's your rent roll? Well, how much rent are you getting per month? Can you afford these payments? People look at the numbers very, very much. That's why I like commercial real estate so much. But it's getting ugly. It's really getting ugly. And if people start pulling out and they're not going to go shop in a physical location, what are they going to do? Well, they have to sell these loans to somebody. And they're trying to find, they want it's musical chairs right now. And they don't want to be the one holding the bag when the music stops. They're stuck in that chair holding these toxic loans. Guys, where are we going to go with this? And do you guys have any comments? I'll throw it out to either one. Who's got a comment on this section?
Oh man, this is going to be an interesting thing to see play out, because like you said, a key thing is they have to roll over those loans every 3 to 5 years. And with the interest rates where they're at now, they have higher interest payments on any of those loans they versus what they had in the past few years. So that, lowers their effective profits, right? Because they got to devote more of their expenses towards just paying the interest on those loans. And then on top of that, if vacancies continue to go down, or they have less demand for these properties, you're going to experience a dramatic devaluation with a lot of this commercial real estate. And so anyone using the a basket of commercial real estate, whatever securities as like any sort of collateral, is going to experience a rapid devaluation of that. And that's when margin calls happen. That's when liquidations happen. And I'm not an expert in this, but that seems like a recipe for disaster, something to look out for in the next few years to see play out.
Yeah, it may not even take years. Patrick, what's your take on the commercial sector?
Just the downstream impacts, what it means to like the average everyday American. That's just going to mean that costs are going to rise because jobs are going to go down. If people lose their jobs, they're going to start foreclosing. Credits are going to suck. Like, people are going to lose out. And we know that as job numbers come down, people die. That's just what happens when you have no money to live. The death rate goes up when people lose their jobs. That's what happens in a high unemployment environment. So it's the downstream impacts that most concern me. And I really hope people are listening and preparing for a rough season.
Yeah, I know it's all depressing news, but to put a positive spin on it is like people that are creative with these spaces that are going to be vacant, and you can get them for pennies on the dollar for rent or even purchase. Like if you want to set up if you can get, for example, cheap power and do Bitcoin mining, that's an option. Multi-use of these multi-purposes. Like think of how big a Walmart is and the infrastructure that they have. You could put in 10, 20 businesses in there. I remember I was in Maryland, and I saw these flea markets, and there were hundreds of vendors that are just there on the weekends. And it's a lot of people that come there. And you repurpose those locations. I know Patrick's doing numbers already. I
already did the numbers. The average grocery store doesn't support it. They've got 300,000 watts coming in the building. That's like 10% of what I need to start.
Yeah, I understand. But just, again, thinking out of the box until you go into the big box. And
just if my wife is watching this show, honey, I do not want you to think that this is the time where you go rent out some building to start a new baby gym for our community. This is not what he's talking about. I don't want her to get these ideas stuck in her head again, Jeff. I don't want to have another place to manage where there's a bunch of kids running around. I can't do it, honey. Please.
Yeah, I've worked in
now that I got that off my chest.
Those kids can be multiple ages too. So, but we've got one more section to, speaking of things that how they're, fizzling out. Let's take a look at some of the other stories that are also in the toxic loans. How about these for toxic stories? We have toxic smoke spewing in a fire. Let's see. This one is Indiana. I think this is the Richmond, Indiana.
Yeah, so we have to ask which one we're looking at now.
Yeah,
guys.
And this one's
there's so many fires, it's ridiculous. What is happening? Like
here's Jersey City
at the same time.
I mean, there are lots of fires, lots of things. Just like what are they after? What is the end goal with so many fires that are way beyond the normal rates? What's the motivation? Do they want the land? Do they want the resources? What could they be possibly hunting for there, Patrick?
There's so many options that we could talk about, but I really believe that there's two different plays here. Option one that we've heard a lot is they're going for the minerals underneath that area. And that's a big possibility, right? That could be it. But option two is they're looking for reasons to force people within these 15-minute cities that I told you I would never be part of.
That's right. I heard that too. Dylan, any takes on all these the fire starters here?
No, I haven't went down that rabbit hole. I mean, I think it's unfortunate when you get these massive fires that spew all these chemicals into the atmosphere and the area around it. I mean, that's one of those things that plays out for years to come. All that fallout infects the insects, which infects the rivers, which infects the fish, which you know it's just no good for these areas to see that, and it just you gotta be more cautious. And of course, obviously, like if there's an ulterior motive, that's no good either. But something,
Man, we really need to make like some notes and start putting something like happy in our shows. Okay, you
Yeah.
guys know what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
Because you guys are feeling this too. I've been saying it for a while. Like nothing really sounds great. So let's start finding something. If you guys are out there and you're hearing great things, share some great news with us too, please, because we'd love to hear the good news. Just tell us how people are winning. If you know of a farmer who is ready to ship me beef and I can pay him in crypto, would you please let me know?
I know
Thank you.
one. Yeah. We gotta have
Yeah.
we gotta have this guy on, a guy named Texas Slim, and he runs the beef initiative.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
So
let's get Texas
shout out
Slim
to
on
Texas
with
Slim.
our favorite winemaker,
Yeah.
and let's just have a wonderful time. I think we can host an event somewhere with these two gentlemen.
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
think and one more positive just to the story about the commercial real estate not looking so hot. In my mind, I'm like, man, I can make this awesome, like bachelor pad loft in some of these old commercial buildings. If it's super cheap, you can have this big, awesome space. One of those like really cool looking ones from what I'm talking about, where you have it's just a big,
I know
open floor
exactly what
plan.
you're talking about. I
Yeah.
watched all of The Arrow.
Yeah. The arrow,
Arrow. Okay, gonna write
like the
that
green
one.
arrow. Was that it?
Yes, stop! Don't laugh at me. They have the exact thing you're
Yeah.
talking about, so you'd
Yeah.
probably like it.
Exactly. Yeah. So like
It's
that'd
called
be super
luxury
cool.
living.
Yeah, but then of course it's not like it's the new luxury, right? Where you get commercial properties for the cheap and you design these really cool lofts in there. And the city's now away, by itself, and all the people, because people are gone. They went to the 15-minute cities. Now the old cities are, there's a lot of space.
Imagine the parties and raves you can have in a place like that. So we'll leave it there. That's rather like all the domestic concerns that we have. Let's turn the page here and look at the world events and see if that's any more joy. I doubt it, but we'll go there.
We will find joy in it.
Okay, so our next area of discussion is this one, and this is we're going over into Europe, and we talked about this last week, and we talked about the people in France and how they were upset and rioting and burning Paris down in France, and we all thought it was regarding more about retirement age. Well, I did some more homework after the show, and unfortunately, I didn't get it done before the show. But it turns out that the French were really upset. Some of them are really informed, and they were going after the BlackRock building, which is interesting. It was targeted in their rioting. Also, the other things here, and we'll focus on that one. So first off, let's talk about France. France is like Europe is upset, but they're targeting upset. And now we hear France, and I didn't have a video. I don't have a link for this one, but we know that Macron was speaking with Xi. And they could be on the table. Like I've heard rumors that France could be one of the next countries that join or said they want to join BRICS. So, Patrick, what have you heard from our French friends over there?
So, actually, it was funny enough. I was watching a show the other day talking about how it might be cheaper to travel to Bora Bora because of this, because they're a French Polynesian island. So, I'm just really happy about that.
There's a positive.
Thank you. I knew I could bring one in somewhere.
Good job.
Dude, I don't know. I mean, they kind of see exactly what the rest of us are seeing. Like all we're noticing here is that the things that we're seeing here stateside are not local. It's a geopolitical global event happening everywhere against banking systems and the fraud that they come with. We want change. And there's a lot of entitled little brats out there who grew up thinking that they could do whatever they want. And now they're going to just do it. It's going to be crazy. So my warning to everyone is when it starts happening, don't go out looking for being a Rambo. Don't go out trying to buy groceries at that time. That is not the time to go stock your grocery carts. Okay.
Yeah.
Stay home.
Yeah. Dylan, any comments on our European friends over there, France or other?
Just that, if this is happening in France, it just kind of, if you think about America and how it was founded, we were a bunch of disagreeable, gritty, hard-nosed people, right? Like we didn't put up with a lot of stuff, and it's kind of unfortunate that now the protests that we see people do are just because someone gets called the wrong name, right? Someone used the wrong word, and that's what it is. Instead of like protesting this kind of stuff that's happening here, right? This is like the real oppression, that financial slavery and financial oppression is happening to everyone. It just seems like we've been so domesticated, made so docile, that are so lazy or apathetic to these things that people just don't care. And that's kind of scary and kind of sad to see that not happening in America more. And not people not standing up and voicing their opinions and saying, hey, this isn't right. Because until that kind of stuff really starts happening, what's the incentive to change? If people just keep going along with it, like if Budweiser stock bounces back and, now they're hitting all-time highs or whatnot. I know that they're not right now, but, they could in the future because people are like, I don't care. It's over. Whatever. That's 2 weeks ago news. That's kind of sad and kind of scary when you think about it, because what does that imply? That implies that like the powers that be can get away with just about anything if there's no one to stand up against them, or if the only place is France, because France is important, but it's not that important.
Yeah, and we have to be selective because
Clydesdales again.
We could literally make the show 2 or 3 hours, but we have to be selective on what we're touching. But just over in Europe, like I think Europe has felt more pain. I think people do things for 2 reasons. 1, they really want to, or they enjoy it, or 2, because they have to. They are forced to. And I think that's where they're at in France right now. And that's where they're getting in a lot of Europe, because everything costs way more over there. They made energy really hard to get. Germany is, I think, cutting their last 3 nuclear plants are being shut off this month. It's getting really difficult just to put normal food on the table. So when people can't make ends meet, they lash out. That's what happens. That's why you start to see it. We're starting to see elements of that in the U.S. Like crime goes up, or certain elements go up, and we have work issues or layoffs. But it's not the huge pain point yet. But I think Europe is going to happen first there. But let's turn the page to Asia. So we got lots going on in Asia, and let me share a couple quick stories there, and then we'll talk about our friends across the Pacific there. So first off, let me start with this story here. So, where'd it go? There it is. Okay, so there's the map of Taiwan. It's not the best map. Thank you, CNN. As usual, did quality work here. But this is China, and this is Taiwan, and you can see that they're basically just surrounding them. And why do we care about Taiwan? Well, first, Taiwan used to be part of China, and now they've broken off, much like Ukraine broke away from Russia. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Taiwan happens to make a lot of semiconductor chips that we need for everything. They make 60% of the global supply of chips and 80 to 90% of the important ones, like the really complicated ones. So that's important. And now we'll talk about this as well, like understanding why people why there is conflict probably on the horizon, as we've heard from our 45th president. This is most likely. China's going to go into Taiwan. What is it about? Is it about similar to Ukraine, where there could be biological labs that are there, and is someone hiding something? Could that come out and be surfaced again? So lots to discuss on this topic. Patrick, why don't you lead off and talk about Taiwan for a moment?
So I wouldn't say that like I would be an expert in this one, Jeff, but what I would say is like it does scare me when I start to see a lot of the posturing that we're seeing happen again, because this is like, it does feel like a repeat. And it just makes me sad for the people who might get hurt there again. So I just hope that people are ready and they see what's on the border over there happening, and praying for the people of Taiwan. Hope that it's not crazy for them right now, and I hope it kind of de-escalates and doesn't turn up to be another Ukraine.
Dylan, any comments on this one?
Yeah, I mean, we've been hearing about this for at least the past year, maybe a little bit more, about how China wants Taiwan, and they've surrounded. This is not the first time that China has, kind of put their military might on display around the island of Taiwan. I think it's unfortunate that we've put ourselves in a situation where there's one small country that is pretty vulnerable to any sort of physical assault, that produces 60% of semiconductor chips. Right? I'm sure that, and I don't know exactly why. So like Patrick, I'm not an expert on exactly why Taiwan is responsible for that much. Like what strategic advantage does Taiwan have that makes it to where they're producing
Their
that
labor is
much?
cheap, so they get to make a lot of chips for very cheap, and they've been like the center of production for a long time. A lot of stuff is made in China and Taiwan,
Yeah.
and they happen to make, like, I think even more of the tool heads, like 200 millimeter tool heads that are used for wafer technology stuff. Like, I think that's probably the answer. It's just the cheaper labor.
Yeah. But I mean, that's that's a really big vulnerability in that supply chain. And that's, that's something that needs to be fixed, because if it's fixed, they weren't such a big player, or there are alternative options, then it wouldn't be as big of a deal. I mean, it'd still be a big deal, but like, it wouldn't be as key of a place to take. And of course, like we've talked about this before, when the power starts shifting, then all the players try to grab as many of the assets as they can. And if they can take an asset from another player to solidify their power for the years going forward, they're going to do it.
China already did. They bought up all of the wafer technology tool heads, all of it.
This has been a problem for 30 years. Like I spent a lot of my career before I left most of it in the tech sector. And like when they started outsourcing to other countries, first Mexico, then Asia, because labor was cheaper, I said, well, what about these risks? What about like the hidden costs? So like, imagine you have like if you put all your eggs in one basket and you have one place where everything comes from, what happens if they don't like you anymore? What happens if forget the cost of sending someone over there to fix something? So if you're saving 10%, you have to make tons of volume for this to make even cost-effective sense. But a lot of people don't understand that. But the U.S. used to make a lot of these things, like Texas Sinclair, Texas Semiconductor. There was huge in Texas that we would make lots of chips. And there were companies used to have locations in the U.S. and Mexico. And then when they wanted to make more production, they thought the product was ready, then they'd move it over to Asia and get more volume there. But then you had two facilities that could build. You could build it in, say, Milpitas, California, or you could build it in Texas, or you could build it in Guadalajara, and you'd have a lot less risk than having it in Beijing or I'm losing. I forget the Chinese cities I used to know, but or Japan or Taiwan or Thailand or Malaysia or Singapore. All these countries that they target now because of the low labor rates. But this is what you get when you have these supply chain issues. So now you're going to see it could impact electronics. So if this happens, I mean, the prices of electronics are going to skyrocket. I mean, your phones, everything that we use, whatever device you're watching us on now. And by the way, please like, share, subscribe. Really appreciate that. But these are things that like people don't like, that are just these hidden costs that they're not aware. But you've got all these different reasons for conflict and all these different reasons that are out there. And there's the geopolitical risk. There's could this be like other kinds of war or surreptitious wars? There's a lot to discuss on that, but all these different wars, all these different attack vectors that now exist because the globe has gotten smaller, because we all need things from, like, we need this from Afghanistan, we need this from Russia, we need this from Japan just to make the car. Like, if we don't have the chip, the car can't run. That's what we're starting to realize. And that's why 5-6 years ago, we were trying to be self-sufficient and be more nationalistic. That's not a bad term. It means taking care of your own house before you expand. But now that as other countries are looking to expand, we see other things on the horizon. That brings us to our other world story, or final world story, which is the International Court. This went under the radar, and I had heard about this, but the International Court, which is really a joke, the ICC, they issued a war crimes warrant for Putin. Right? They did it last month. I didn't hear any coverage of it. I heard about it just in passing this week, and I'm like, what's that about? But the real hidden story about this, and we talked about that last week, it's more about what's happening in August with the trip, and if these the BRICS nations, South Africa, thank you, in Durban, right? And let me share that other image there. This is the one we shared last week, and then we try and blow it up, but you can see that they're going to. Let's see. It won't zoom. Thank you so much. There,
just use your fingers and just do this.
You guys use your fingers, but in that really small text, which I can't zoom in. Sorry, so let me drop out of that. But it says, watch last week's episode. In August, the BRICS leaders are supposed to meet in South Africa. And one of those things that they're going to launch is a new world currency, an alternative currency, probably backed by some basket of things, either their currencies, commodities, or a mixture.
Or
but
gold.
The important thing is August, that's going to happen. And if the leaders are going to gather there, that means Putin must leave Russia and go to South Africa, which leaves him susceptible to an international arrest. That's why they issued this. Why this is going to happen, I don't know. Maybe they changed the location of the meeting. We'll see.
Yeah.
But that's something to think about. Patrick, I see you're in agreement there. What are your thoughts?
August seems to be a pretty big month in terms of a lot of things. Yeah, like we have been expecting a good rally around that time. We're expecting Litecoin happening around that time. We're expecting a lot of fun stuff to come out with CBDC structures in July. So I don't know. It could be a fun month in August. We're going to be busy in August is what I'm predicting.
Don't any comments there?
Yeah, it just seems like a polarizing tactic. Just to close some doors for them, and to get alliances lined up. I kind of like your theory that you said is kind of to make him more vulnerable, susceptible to any sort of arrest. When he needs to travel or be at a world stage, or to prevent him from showing up, things like that seem entirely plausible. I mean,
you can make cases a distraction too, right? It could be like, look at this instead of this over here. I mean,
guys, this is not going to work. Who's going to show up and arrest Putin?
Well, but what I'm saying is that they could make a big dog and pony show in August and then put the new currency on the back burner in the news cycle.
And he'll just wear his Chinese gold necklace that he just got and be very happy.
Yeah. I mean, he's the West's favorite bad guy right now.
Well,
he's
absolutely. They blame him on Russia, everything, right? But as you mentioned about China and the necklace, one last thing, we didn't even have time to talk about it, but this leads into our next section where I don't know if you guys heard, but China last week, they increased their debt ceiling, or they launched a lot more credit for their people, which seems to be leading towards more purchases of gold and silver because they really like those sorts of purchases and storing their wealth in China. So as we look at the next story, which is right in Patrick's wheelhouse, we see gold and silver prices just going up like crazy. Patrick, I know you posted this from our local coin shop here. I think we were just there today. You want to talk more about that?
Yeah, the price of gold is higher today. This is the price they're buying silver at. So $27 is what he'll pay you for your silver. The spot price right now is $25. What price they're selling silver eagles at right now, they're not selling any silver eagles. Why aren't they selling any silver eagles? Because they don't have any. They're sold out. How much are they going to pay for the next silver eagles? That's what she was shocked when she was saying to me. Have you heard what they're charging now for silver eagles? And, I kind of looked into the market as well, but the reality of it is shipping right now is going to take a while if they even have the inventory. So there's a beautiful thing happening in silver here, and I just don't know what price silver goes to until the derivative markets can no longer handle it.
Yeah, you were hearing some major delays too, right?
Yeah, I'm hearing and a lot of normal, even our friends that we know who are brokers are saying we have 5 or 6 week waiting periods.
Yeah, and here's just a quick look. You could see the eagle and this is a random year. And this is probably quantity price.
That's the buffalo.
Well, I'm trying to zoom in here on the top pick of the American Eagle right here, $46.
Yeah, as low as that's if you buy 2,000 of them.
Jesus.
Yeah. So 1 to 19 for check or what? It's $48 to buy an American Eagle right now. Where spot is what, 27, 26 right now?
25 something.
Yeah. So the premium is almost double the price, which is so the value, you have to pay double the value to get the physical object. That's what the supply is like. And then supply shock. Again, all these things are happening in the gold and silver market right now. Dylan, any comments? How are you feeling about gold and silver? Do you a fan? You big into it?
I'm not. I wouldn't say big into it, but I like it. I understand its purpose. I understand its place. I think people in the Bitcoin space that are really far over there have posed all the questions and had all the conversations, and they've kind of dismissed it. But there's a lot of practical applicability for gold and silver. I mean, it's been a form of money that people have used for thousands and thousands of years. It's not going to change. And if it is kind of suppressed, like you guys have been saying, there's some opportunity there, but people recognize it. And I think it's good to have around and understand its place in any sort of portfolio and any sort of prepping strategy. I do think that you got to be careful and don't put it in a vault where you don't have control over it, where someone else does, because if things go crazy, you can't get access to it. And just understand the responsibility that comes along with holding something of value like that in your house. Don't go telling people about it. Don't go showing people where it's at. Keep it hidden. Keep it safe. Right?
Yeah, but morons only put their silver in their house. No one actually keeps gold and silver at their house. They find a different place to put it. That's the whole point. Silver and gold are insurance policies. It's in case Bitcoin doesn't work.
Well, it's also like the phrase is God's money, but it's the geopolitical risk is much lower with gold and silver because it's accepted everywhere. You don't have to worry about they're going to take dollars or euros because everyone will take gold and silver. But the interesting thing is, I think it's roughly a decade where the gold has gone up like 10x. It used to be $200, now it's like 2,000. Might be longer than that. I don't know the chart offhand. But silver has not really moved in that time frame. That's why a lot of people are looking at silver. And now you see the impact of the supply shock. We're not having enough. People want it. And now prices like premiums are through the roof. It's just pretty bad. But you need to be prepared and think about all these different things about, are you decentralized much like Bitcoin? Like, do you have it in several places? Do you have it in a Go pack? Do you have it in a safe? Do you have it at a friend's house? Do you have it in another state? But are these locations under your control? Can you get it if you need it? So that's the kind of things you need to be thinking about. But like we say, you want to be prepared and not scared. But another thing that we like to think about, and this is another topic that's not really joyous, but it's one thing you need to be prepared. Like everything we talked about so far in the show, like we've talked about the toxic fumes and fires and all these different incidents that are happening. Patrick, I know you have a particular item that recently showed up at your front door that you got and you're really happy to have, and we're going to share how you get it. So Patrick, why don't you show them, everybody what you got?
Ready? Okay, here it is. This is made by Mira, and this is my wife's. It's a gas mask. It allows me to breathe air and not have to breathe in chemicals if I put a filter on. And it also allows me to have a filter on this side here so I can still deploy my weapon system and have no issue holding my weapon system. Mira, they make a great product.
Yeah, and here's the website. You can see.
You got to have them. There's fires everywhere, chemical fires everywhere. They're all natural fires, of course. They just happen spontaneously, random combustion in these factories that kill lots of cows, like 18,000 cows at a time. It's very random. So just in case one randomly happens in your area to spontaneously combust and there's lots of chemicals, my wife knows that she's prepared and not scared.
Now,
Love you, honey.
Let's be honest here for a moment, since you brought your wife into the equation. Was the gas mask originally for her or for you, Patrick?
You think this is my first gas mask?
Good
really?
answer.
Are you
asking?
I mean, wait. I mean, did you guys see that? Go back, Jeff. Go back to the link. You guys want to know what I'm really looking at? My wife is I'm gonna order it actually today, so she doesn't get mad at me. Go all the way down. Scroll down a little bit more. Go down. There it is. My kids need some too. Doesn't that look cute? But I mean, the reality is these things are $500.
That's expensive.
But they're also completely priceless if you need it.
This is true. I mean, you need water, you need breathable air, you need those things. And while you don't want to think about it, I mean, if you hope this is the kind of thing you buy.
System, you could put your little valve in here and this thing opens up and it allows you to have water that comes right through here. So you even have a hose that connects to a little canteen with a valve, and it's just a beautiful system. I'm just so proud of Mira. Please sponsor our show.
Yeah, we've gotten Fairlife, we've gotten Mira. We definitely need to seek out some sponsorships here, because we're like we mentioned earlier in the show, we really promote the things that we use and enjoy and support those kinds of things. So that's what we like.
Yeah, and please don't go and buy another crappy mask. I've tested some out. You don't want to use the crappy masks that are like showing up on your Facebook account, like spend the money, get it right, get the good filters that are actually going to work for your system and your security solutions, and like with your practical mindset, whether you're a weapon system carrier or need something with bigger field of vision. These are things you must consider as a prepper. I love them. I think they're wonderful accessories.
Yeah, and as far as the quality, think about, like, speaking of masks, think about the different qualities of masks we've had to learn about in the last couple of years. An N95 versus, just a T-shirt over your mouth. You definitely get what you pay for with certain types of.
This has like really no filtration this way, but I could technically use this as a mask, I guess. I
would love, like, it's too bad that I would have loved to seen you wear that onto an airplane. I'm sure that would be fun. Especially considering your heritage, that would probably be a security issue.
Airplane, I would not do that. Sorry. You know how I am in airports. Like, we don't joke around there. That's like, I'm in, I do my business, and I'm out. Like, thank you very much, sir, man. Bye.
All right. Well, let's move on to another topic that everybody enjoys, which is crypto, which we've all hinted at already. So we've got one, like the first thing that we've already mentioned it earlier. We have a major event coming for Litecoin. I know this is near and dear to you, Patrick. So how about you tell the viewers a little bit? 116 days to the halving for Litecoin. What does that mean to you, Patrick?
Okay. So when we started mining Litecoin, Litecoin was at 50. It was 50 Litecoin being dispensed per block. Went down to 25 Litecoin being dispensed per block reward, and that was in 2015. Was 12 and a half. So you guys were looking at another supply crunch here, where 2015 hit, then there's a 2019 halving. So here you are in 2023, and our rewards are just cutting in half, just like we expected again. So I'm not sure what else to say except for good job, Litecoin. Charlie Lee, props to you for running a really great project, and honestly just giving it up to the community, selling everything to give it back to the community. It's the closest thing we have to Bitcoin, in my opinion. And I'm looking for some really huge gains coming with Litecoin. Right now, this is not financial advice, but this is my personal advice, in my opinion. I believe Litecoin has a huge upside. I think that right now we're about 4 times away from its all-time high. Bitcoin's sitting about 2.5 times away from its all-time high. So for me, I'm sitting here thinking, I think Litecoin is a very strong play, and I'm looking for this reduction of supply in the tokenomics going forward again for the next 4 years to only be preceded by a rise in price, because as soon as it cuts in half, the miners are now going to lose half of their income. Okay, so for that to work out, again, similar to Bitcoin, you haven't seen the capitulation in the hash rate. And so I'm seeing right now that Litecoin is running strong. They're looking hard. They're bracing hard. They're finding new ways to get financing. I don't think the Bitcoin miners or the Litecoin miners are going to see the hash rate reduction that we've seen historically. But right now, I do see that the price is going to go up historically.
Yeah, and I think we're going to talk about Bitcoin in a moment, but Litecoin, I mean, it's my other name is Litecoin Leader. It was the first coin that I ever purchased. It's the only network that's never gone down. It's stronger than Bitcoin because it was shortly after that. It's over 10 years old. It's got a long track record of just going strong, and it kind of flies under the radar. But almost everywhere that takes Bitcoin takes Litecoin everywhere. So, Dylan, what's your thoughts on Litecoin?
I like what you guys have said about it. I think the thing Litecoin has going for it is its track record. It's predictable. It's got a lot of similarities to Bitcoin. I think that's the big, problem with it is it has to compete against Bitcoin. And so it doesn't get the spotlight or the investment dollars or the media attention that something like Bitcoin gets, which of course impacts overall liquidity. And, I think it's a tough game to compete against it, but I think you guys are spot on with a lot of things that you're saying, something to pay attention to. And I do like how it is a project that is consistent over time.
Yeah, and it does have that extra one feature that a lot of people will kind of overlook, which is they call it Mimblewimble.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you, Harry Potter, for that lovely name. But it's the privacy version, which Bitcoin does not have. So that's what we're going for. But let's talk about Bitcoin a little bit. And we've got plenty of metrics like we normally cover on Bitcoin. Let's share that here. So we got the Dylan, we're going to let you lead this one off because I know you think you wanted to talk about this. So Bitcoin, hey, let's not undersell this. Let's have a happy moment here. Bitcoin is over $30,000, which might be a comment about the dollar, but hey, Bitcoin's up. Okay, Bitcoin's definitely heading the right direction. So Dylan, is there anything you wanted to point out on this or the other metrics page that we often talk about the mining?
I mean, a couple things here. Obviously over $30,000. That's a critical barrier. That was kind of where it was at before it had the big drops down over the summer. It's kind of a psychological barrier, and it was also one of the last barriers that the bears kind of were saying if it doesn't break that, it's likely to go back down. So of course, not financial advice, but once it's hit this level, I think a lot of people think that it has a little more room to run in the short term. And I think the other thing to pay attention to is the Bitcoin dominance, something that is symbolic because it depends on how they calculate, because there's a lot of things being compared to Bitcoin that shouldn't even exist because their market caps are really inflated. But generally what we're seeing is the Bitcoin dominance go up. It's been trending up over time. So while Bitcoin's gaining capital, we're seeing many projects, other projects that are compared against that, losing capital or losing price ground to Bitcoin. A guy, Benjamin Cowan, into the cryptoverse, has been highlighting this a lot for a little more technical view on that. And so I think that's something that's been playing out. So it's important to pay attention to. And generally what people say or have said in the past, kind of the way capital flows into the space, it's kind of like it goes into Bitcoin first, then you see it go into something kind of like Ethereum. And then once that has happened and they kind of have went up, they've stabilized, they've kind of established themselves in a bull pattern, it kind of trickles down to the other projects and networks that are associated with that. So if you're seeing a lot of capital flow into Bitcoin, it's possible that you might see more capital start flowing in to other projects in the space if that's what you're looking for.
Well, I'm definitely going to throw it over to Patrick as the former Bitcoin miner. But I gotta mention on this page, and we can talk about this page or the other page, Patrick. But this logo right here is probably one of the worst Bitcoin logos I've ever seen. I don't know what they're thinking here.
That's not even the Bitcoin logo.
No, I don't know what that is. And the Bitcoin, by the way, Bitcoin logo is public domain. You can use it. So whoever's running BlockShare,
this is the Bitcoin logo.
clean this up.
That's how it's supposed to look like.
That's horrible.
That's like a McDonald's version after 10 years of it eating McDonald's. Like, what is that? That's not a Bitcoin.
All right. Patrick, any metrics you want me to share, or you just want to talk about it?
No, I think that it's just really, Dylan hit on the point that I'm looking at. The two big things that I see that stick out to me in this chart are, one, the dominance. Usually, historically, Bitcoin in the last 4 or 5 years, you'll see the dominance hit right about this level, but this is kind of where it caps out at. So what happens is you'll start to see these other tokens like Ethereum start to rise, like Dylan said, and it doesn't mean that money's leaving Bitcoin. It just means more money is entering in other places other than Bitcoin. So once people stack up on their Bitcoin, then they'll get a little bit of Litecoin and maybe some Cardano and maybe, but it's always Bitcoin first. And that's what's happening. I don't think that the dollars are leaving Bitcoin. Let me take that back. There are some people who do trade that way, and that is part of their strategy. But in general, most people are going to look at it, especially as new investors, and say, what do I want to buy right now? Bitcoin for sure. What else? Litecoin, maybe some Matic, maybe some Cardano, the things that are less expensive. And you start to see the Bitcoin dominance right about this level before you start to see the altcoin run like Dylan's talking about. So that's the one piece. The other piece that I wanted to bring up was the difficulty. There's a difficulty adjustment coming up here this week, next week. And as the difficulty adjustment comes, we're expecting the difficulty to go down, which means it will be more profitable for miners. So these are beautiful things I like to see for the mining community.
Interesting take there. But we've got a few other crypto stories that we definitely need to get to. There's a video that we're going to play next, which is from our friend George. Patrick, you got that one ready?
Yep.
All right. There we go.
But supposedly, the lawyers for FTX says that they have recovered close to $8 billion, 7.9 billion to be exact. So now they feel so confident that they say they are actually considering relaunching the FTX exchange in Q2.
That's it. I'm not going to play a whole lot more than that. I am George. We are all George. We love George. I love his take on it. Please give him a listen, guys. He has really great information, and I get a lot of my info from George. So thanks again, George. If you ever are listening to this, I would love to build a Lego set with you. But the reality of it is, like, I'm going to kick it to you guys. FTX, they found money. They found money. What are people going to do? What should people be thinking? What do you think about FTX finding money?
Dylan, what do you think here?
Man,
Would you buy FTX?
I think no. And
A
that's
lot
I
of
had
people bought
like,
FTX. A
here-
lot of their token went up 98% on the news.
you know,
a lot
like,
of people
Easy
bought
to do when
FTX.
it's that low.
there's other things, I would consider, I put in the category of things that are basically setting my money on fire and, could provide some entertainment. Hey, or maybe I am better off afterwards, but like, I'm not too concerned about it. That'd be the category I'd put it in. So at this point in time, just because of everything that has happened with it, everything that's come out about it, it's like you're playing with fire there. You're probably going to lose everything if you try to invest in that. And like, can you really take it seriously when there's all these other projects out there? Like I don't know how anyone will really take it seriously. There's other products that do it better than FTX. So why would you even give any more time and attention to it other than just like hoping and praying for a massive speculative return?
Well, I agree with you, and I think that I'm actually going to like promote this a little bit of like I rarely do this, but we have a Patreon site there where Patrick and I and Dylan sometimes joins us too. We talk about things twice a month. We do an AMA, and we talk about this a lot. There are reasons why you would be in a project, and there's with so many different projects that are out there. If you find one red flag, it's not a problem. Just push that aside and look at another project.
That's it.
Getting 15 or 20 projects that are all like this, everything looks good. I like this. And as long as crypto goes well, this should be good. That's not as hard as you think. And we have an annual report that I wrote last month with a video that goes along with it. You get that if you join our Patreon. The link will be in the description. If you want to join our Patreon, we will include that in the membership. You will get the annual report. You'll get that video, and you'll see the 15 or 20 coins that I like for this year. But FTX is definitely not one of them.
Yeah, the way I think about this is I think about my friends in the community who had money in FTX that are looking at this as like really great news, because if they found some of their damn money, they want it back. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to take it out and they're going to take Sam Bankman-Fried and put that in the bucket that you're not allowed to talk about with Will Smith's moms, and Bad Boys. And then you're going to take that and you're going to put that bucket in the same bucket with all the other junk that we don't like. And you're never going to talk about Budweiser again. We're never going to drink Bud Light again, right? The only good use for Bud Light is for greasing up like the tractor wheels to make sure that the tractor is running great and you can just roll it over with a steamroller. I love that video. But they're going to take their money. They're going to look for something else and they're going to run. This guy is tainted. This company is tainted. I don't care what leadership they have put in place. FTX is done.
I think that's a great analogy you have with Anheiser Busch and Bud Light. There's with so many beers out there. If you have an issue with Bud Light, find another beer. There's plenty of them out there. If you have an issue with FTX, find another exchange. Find another
The
product.
funny thing is, there's a lot of people who would really disagree with you on that comment on Bud Light. They would be like sworn like Bud Light fans for life. But today, not today.
I mean,
well,
you gotta question
anything
someone
tastes
who's
better
a
than Bud Light
fan for life. Like, come on.
Yeah, that's true.
If that's your front runner for beer, like, come on.
Dude, there are people who are like total, well, not even Bud Light, but Budweiser is a company, right? People are done with them.
Yeah, and they own a lot of different beverages too. That's
Anheiser Busch is the owner, right?
I mean, I'm from St. Louis, right? Budweiser, Anheuser Busch is like from St. Louis. Now it was bought out by InBev a few years back, so it's not even really a St. Louis company anymore, right? So they sold out. So it hurts me to see that happen.
Not more than it hurts us to see the garbage going on with FTX included. We're gonna run. That's it.
Yeah. And here's a quick visual. Just all these brands are owned by Anheuser Busch.
Yeah. So don't
So
buy
I'm not going to read them all, but you can see them if you're a fan of like Landshark. Like why I wouldn't put O'Doul's on the list, but I'm just saying, like Shock Top is one too. Like a lot of people like these brands, they don't know who's owned by whom. So it's something you need to investigate. But we've got two other crypto stories before we wrap up the section here. Let's see them if I got lost again pulling up that image. Okay, first one, Bittrex. Speaking of exchanges, Bittrex, right? They've been warning members for a while. This exchange has been around for a long time. Some people used it. Some people but they're closing U.S. operations. They're focusing on these hotbeds of growth in Bermuda and Liechtenstein. That's definitely sarcastic there. Just favorable rules there. So they're shutting in U.S. operations. And then you get the other story, like the other direction. Fold, which is I actually have a Fold card, and I use the Fold app. I spin the wheel once a day and get some sats for it for free. But they're working with Visa to get more and more people prepaid cards that you get Bitcoin rewards for Fold. So you have this dichotomy of some companies are looking like let's grow, some companies like let's get out of the U.S. Are they opposing thoughts, or are they common ground for crypto at this point? Dylan?
A couple of ways I wanted to talk about that. One, it makes sense. Like if regulations are becoming more strict in the United States, and they're going to, that you would try to move operations elsewhere so you don't get that clamp down. So you're not restricted should things come down that impact your operation. So I understand that with Bittrex, I understand the potential strategic move there. And then, Visa and Fold, Visa wants to just get their cards in as many hands as possible so they can, keep getting those fees that they get for using the cards. And then the Fold app, I like it. Just a quick comment, because I did a breakdown on Fold after using it for about a year. I think you have to be a power user on Fold, or you have to be very strategic with it. I know this is a slightly different direction, but be very strategic. Otherwise, you don't really get as much rewards as you hope. It might be better to do some other things and use some other purchasing routes and then buy Bitcoin directly versus trying to earn them as rewards. But it's a cool thing, cool concept, and there are some benefits to it. But just always think what your goal is for using these rewards cards.
Patrick?
You know how I feel about Fold.
Well, tell the viewers how you feel.
Fine. I'll go negative again. I don't like Fold. Fold is just another way to integrate with the old banking system. I mean, Fold preys on people's marketing. That's all they do. They do great marketing. You're not really getting a huge win. Dylan, I saw your video. You did a great breakdown of the actual payout and how much you'd have to spend to make it work. And I just don't believe that. I kind of feel like they're perverting the space, honestly. I just don't like it. So they could do whatever they want. But to me, unless you're able to accept Bitcoin, then you're just trying to collect Bitcoin off of us. And I'm not up for it.
I don't mind Fold too much because I like the fact that they give you rewards for things you may already be purchasing. And I know they had they used to have a good deal with Amazon where you get 5% back. If you just bought a gift card from Amazon, you get 5% back in Bitcoin. They don't do that anymore. They made it much more difficult. So they made it progressively harder. And it's kind of like the old faucets. If you remember if you're really old school and the Bitcoin faucets where they just dribble you some sats just for refreshing a page or playing a game, they still exist. Those games still exist, but it's really not worth your time because you're gonna really do this for 100 sats, which is nothing. So back in the day, 100 sats. I mean, you got more sats back in the day. We got thousands of sats because they weren't worth much. But now it's really not worth it. So that pretty much is it for our crypto section. So now all left is to talk about a little history mixed with a little woo-woo. So going there, considering the dates, today is mid-April, and it's right around the corner for those of you in the U.S. This is the income tax season. And I know, Patrick, why don't you tell the people a little bit about the service that you have with Pro Bitcoin Solutions while I get the rest of the story ready?
Yeah, if you guys are looking for ways to account for your crypto taxes, Pro Bitcoin Solutions, we offer a way where you don't even need to tell us who you are. Just send us an email. You can even create a fake email address if you want. Send us your public addresses. We'll scan the blockchain, send you a CSV report, fill out your form for the IRS. We don't even need to know your name. If you want to let us leave it blank, we don't care. We'll just send it to you anyways, and it's a low fee. So the reason we came up with that is we had a client of ours who was charged quite a lot of money, $6,000 or so. And we found out we could do the same work for a whole lot less. And we're not even talking, we're talking fractions less, hundreds of dollars versus thousands. So just a solution for the crypto community. If you're struggling with your taxes and don't know what to do, we'll help you run your reports, and we'll let you account for highest in or first in, first out methodology, depending on what your tax advisor wants you to do.
Yeah, and we don't like to talk too much about what we do, but we do things for the community. Like we don't just sell like, hey, come talk to us. So like we do have charge for our time at times, but for the most part, we offer products that are useful to the community. We saw the need of the clients that they wanted this service, so Patrick went out and made it. Like the clients want like wallets like this, so we went out and made them. So that's the kind of things that we do. But we also do plenty of research. Let's talk about the IRS for a moment. And that's what this story is about today. So I don't know if do you guys know what year the IRS was made?
The IRS was made in 1913.
That is correct, which is the same year as what?
The same year as the 14th Amendment passing.
14th, 15th, and 16th, I believe. But also,
it's a year before. Is it like roughly a year or so before?
1913.
That was
Why are you showing me garbage?
The Federal Reserve was invented in 1913 along with the IRS. So let's look at that. And then here it is. The highlights of the IRS, and this is not a page I like to frequent, but I highlighted here, and I can't really make it too much larger because of the lovely website, but basically I'll read it to you. It says, 1913, Wyoming became the 36th and last state needed to ratify the 16th Amendment. Now, there's another page I'll put in the show notes that talks more about the 1913 actual document, which was ratified, according to this, in February of 1913. It was passed by it took 4 years to ratify. So, Dylan, you weren't far off by saying a year before because it was in process. But there are many stories that are out here, and I'm going to put this. There's a lot of notes in here. I kind of summarized it, so I'm just going to talk to it. But I'll put this in the show notes. The 16th Amendment. This is the woo-woo part of the story, and I'll say this is between buckets 1 and 2. It's mostly bucket 1, I believe, because you have to go and dig into this. But the 16th Amendment of the United States was never fully ratified. That's the story. And back then, there were 48 states. And the rules of ratification for the United States is such that 3/4 of the states must say, thumbs up, we ratify this. It can be an amendment to the Constitution. And it's a high bar because, we want all the states to be mostly in agreement. That's 3/4. So that means 36 states out of 48. And it took until 1913 with Wyoming back then. But what actually happened was Kentucky and Oklahoma were counted as yeses, but they were actually no's.
Kentucky and Tennessee.
Kentucky and Oklahoma at first. Okay. According to this article that I read, Tennessee
isn't bucket 3. This is like real.
Bucket 1 is real.
Yeah, this is real.
Yeah.
Bucket 1.
So you didn't clarify this. You need to tell us this is bucket 1.
I said it's between 1 and 2, and I said it's mostly 1. I did say that. So I'm going to say it again. It's bucket 1 for the most part. And this is you need to dig into this and see that all it's Tennessee's on the list. So the first two that the article lists with Kentucky and Oklahoma were listed as yeses, but they really voted no because what they approved was not the original document. They did not ratify what they were asked to ratify. So there's two. So now this was marked as a yes vote by Secretary of State Philander Knox. I don't know anyone who wouldn't be named Philander or be a Philanderer. It's a bad name, or especially hopefully he wasn't Secretary of Treasury at any point. But he said 1913, we get enough states, it's good. Well, what happened, as soon as you get to 36, they stopped. If you dug into it, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, and Louisiana were all on the list of iffy to no, heavy no's. And then 12 other states actually violated their state law in their ratification process. They did it over a holiday break or not enough people, not a caucus, or they changed the wording. So if you dig into it, it's not 36. It actually goes down to 21, which is less than half. So technically, if you dig into it, the 16th Amendment was never ratified, so the IRS never should have been even enacted in 1913.
How'd that get missed?
How'd that get missed? Because everybody
Dylan, you get the stuff I get now. Finally, you're on my page. You're like,
how? What? How did this? Well,
how did they not know that the money wasn't real?
No, they wanted the currency. That's what they wanted. They were motivated because they were collecting income tax at that point. It started in the 1860s because the country needed the money, and that's where they first started to tax the rich, and that's what happened under actually the Lincoln administration and the Civil War. It continued on and off until 1913, and that's when it became permanent. And that permanent was because they were drunk on the income tax that they were getting. They don't want to lose that revenue. So the states were kind of really encouraged by the almighty dollar to go and say, yes, we want this revenue. Can we please still have it? That's how it got missed by 12 or 13 states, because Secretary of State said yes, and he counted as much as he can. As soon as he could mark the box, like, we got enough, they passed it.
And then there was war.
Of course, there's always war. There's always conflict, because that's like, well, there was World War I, World War II, all these things that ensued. But in 1913, like, the people were blindsided with this, like the Federal Reserve and the IRS all at once. It's just so many things happened in 1913, and that's how the IRS came to be.
Is there a statute of limitations on this? Like, is this one of those things like you could go back and challenge it?
Well, we have the 18th Amendment and the 21st Amendment, right? We had 18th Amendment, which was prohibition, and then the 21st Amendment repealed prohibition. So you can pull back an amendment. That's the only time it's ever happened. But you got to have all the states agree again. And alcohol, great, completing the circle of our show here. Like, they prohibited in the roaring 20s. They prohibited, I don't know what the year was when prohibition was. I think it's 20s and 30s, Al Capone era. But prohibition was not around long because there were bootleggers and all. Like, it was such a big deal, they just pulled it back. But they have to get all the states to agree and vote. It's a process. And we have not, I don't think we voted on an amendment since the proposed ERA amendment back in the 70s.
So is this
fun stuff in history. If you dig into the right stuff, it's actually fun in history, believe it or not.
Can you
it's not just the
a
History
little
Channel.
less shocking in the future? Dylan,
Hey,
are you
is
still
it timely
thinking
or
the
not,
politics
right?
are out, or are you thinking you might look at politics now that you find these things?
No politics, man. You
Man, I would vote for you.
you can't fix anything. The new system has to arise. Maybe politics in the new system, not the current system.
Well, I will share this because we're wrapping up the show. But Cliff High does a lot of drive along kind of podcast stuff, and he puts it up in a Substack. But he was saying that a lot of government's going to be overthrown, and they're just going to say, we're not going to believe this guy, and they're going to find the smart guys in the back of the room, and they're just going to follow them. So, Patrick, I was thinking about us three as we're not going to run for leadership, but don't be surprised if people start turning hey, look, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. It'll happen. It'll happen.
Comments like that make me want to shut down our YouTube channel. Like, I don't want people to know. I don't want to be on anyone's radar. I just am, seriously, guys, I'm here because I'm hoping that what we have knowledge of will help you in some way, shape, or form during this coming time. That's it. That's why I'm here. I don't need anything from anyone. I'm just hoping you guys are feeling the love, because the goal is to share what's happening so that you can be prepared, not scared.
Excellent final words there, Patrick. Dylan, what do you got to wrap up the show for today?
Oh man, so much. Echoing Patrick's words, I think that's very important. And I think the thing I'll say and reiterate is invest your time, money, and energy in the brands, people, projects, ideas, and values that you want to be prominent in your future. That's absolutely true. And the great words there. We had lots of scary stories, lots of things that are kind of downers. I go back to that word again. There you go, Ninja. But
yeah, you watch too much Ninja.
Yeah, I can't believe I used hearken, but I used it properly. But don't worry about the things you can't control. Focus on the things you can. Control your own environment. Be prepared so you're not scared, and focus there. And you can control what you consume, control what you grow, control what you have in your house, control your environment and your friends, and what you focus your energy on, because there's no point in focusing energy on things that you cannot change for that given day. Focus on what you can, so you are prepared and not scared. And with those final words, I hope you enjoyed our program. Do the whole subscribe, share it out, get this thing, because we are here to help you guys so you're prepared and not scared. Hopefully you can help someone else with these clips and videos. And we really appreciate you sharing us out and liking all that cool stuff. And we read every comment. So if you have more positivity, please share in the comments, and we will see you next time.